Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in a couple of prior videos, we started taking a look at knives from the company FOBOS Knives. For operators by operators. Beautiful knives, fantastic craftsmanship, premium, just nice quality materials, fit and finish, attention to detail, everything. Today we're going to look at another model. Well, this one here, this is the Cacula. This happens to be in CPM, S35, VN steel, a good quality belt knife, nice size, good overall sort of shape and size for general purpose. So today what we're going to do, you'll notice this is still in the box. I haven't as much as even opened this. We're going to get into this in a first look and impression video. Then in the future, we'll get going on some of the field use, different sort of impressions. So today, just a first look at this. Maybe we'll compare it against some other knives in a similar size class, take a look at it against its larger brothers. But with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now, before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at FOBOS Knives who did provide this for review. So I'm pretty excited for this. The last knife we looked at from FOBOS was the Tier 1 BC, which was a very refined and sort of lightweight bushcrafty style knife. I think we're going to see some similar, and I'm not going to say design elements, but just character traits here with the Cacula. So as we get into this unboxing, FOBOS doing a fantastic job with their overall presentation. Everything they do is just full attention to the details. As we remove this here, the Kydex sheath, very lightweight and refined Kydex, which I like from FOBOS. They also do a fantastic job just giving you some extra little goodies. So when you're paying a premium for a premium knife, you do want to get just a little bit of satisfaction from, some of the extras sometimes. And just the fact that they threw in a nice little variety of stickers. Just again, very nice attention to detail. You also get some blade wax, which for S35 VN is not going to be quite as important to keep this fully protected as with more of a carbon steel or something that will heavily rust. I did find that for the most part, S35 VN doing a fantastic job with overall, not just edge retention, but corrosion resistance. But the fact that you get a little bit of blade wax here is cool. Now, I've taken a look at their warranty and prior videos. This is a fantastic warranty, and it's really what they're saying, an heirloom product. So take your knife, pass it along to friends, to family, generation to generation, and the warranty will certainly transfer from one owner to the other. But more importantly, passing knives along, there is something to be said for that. So, digging out, your old, grandparents or grandfather's knife or your father's knife or, something that's been in the family for a long time. Just really, really cool. And the other thing that FOBOS does wonderfully, as you take a look here, some additional information. Now, this is very specific to the Cacula itself. These are specific to the model that you buy. And so it tells you everything from the steel to the heat treat to the bevels and grind angles and basic maintenance and care information. So we're going to set this aside so I can refer to it throughout this video. But as we get this open here, the Cacula. So here, again, just a fantastic offering from FOBOS Knives. The blade steel, S35 VN, the handles, carbon fiber with these awesome red liners. Absolutely beautiful overall blade shape, like a drop point design. Ends up with the ability to put your thumb over the top. FOBOS has been doing a wonderful job with their jimping, knocking it over, nicely chamfered and contoured, and they just keep getting more and more refined. Something that I'm seeing right away that I very much like is what I'm going to call the guard and choil area. So it does have a pronounced guard, which is going to be awesome for like stabbing tasks and like splitting. I will use this to split down and through my kindling to kind of, crack the wood and split it apart. It would also be good for, plunging in the ability to lock up on that guard. But, and why I call it a choil area is because this is not a finger choil, but it's also not just a sharpening choil. Because this has the ability to get a little bit forward there, you can actually grip the knife right through this area if you're careful to get a little more controlled and detailed work. And actually, as I do that, feels pretty good in terms of my finger placement on the back of the handle and the ability to index. The handle, a nice size. Phobos has been doing a wonderful job with their handle size. I have a large size hand and the handle melting nicely into my grip. Indexing very well. Now, one thing that if you go back into my original Tier 1C video, they do actually get a little bit thin towards the back end. Now, that does a couple of things. It's actually ergonomically really good for carving, but it does sort of get thin in terms of chopping capabilities. Now, keep in mind, the Cacula is not going to be a chopper. You're not going to be doing limbing. So for this model, I have absolutely no problem with the handle shape. And in fact, if anything, I think it helps to enhance this particular design. 3 bolts across the handle. You can see the 3-bolt design. Now, I'm a little bit surprised. This is where I'm going to roll in one of the other models. I'm a little bit surprised that we don't see the 2-bolt design with the bow drill divot. As you take a look here, this is the Phobos Knives Tier 1 BC, and this does have a bow drill divot socket both on each side. And to me, the Cacula is lending itself very nicely to that sort of bushcraft niche where I feel like you could certainly do that here and get away with it. From a comfort perspective, I don't think that would be any problem. And in fact, if you actually take a look at the handles, I feel like the handles are probably pretty much identical. I mean, they got to be pretty darn close, subtly different in terms of the overall length, and general geometry is pretty much the same. So I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't do that. Now, personally, for me, does that matter? Probably no, because I don't know if I would really necessarily use that socket. I think what I would probably do is actually carve out my own socket out of wood and not necessarily need my bearing block to be the knife itself. So from a practical standpoint, does that matter? No. From a design perspective, it just caught me by surprise. As we take a look at the blade and the grind, here you have a flat grind from pretty much a high saber down to the secondary bevel. Now, Phobos does report in their documentation that this is roughly a 4 to 5 degree primary bevel down into your secondary bevel, which comes from the factory at approximately 20 degrees, which is going to be a nice overall edge angle. I did find that on the Tier 1 BC, I felt as though that would be about perfect. I maintain that same exact feeling here. I think that's going to be just about the right angle, striking the balance between a durable edge and a slicey edge. If you wanted to go more to hard use, this could be broadened out to around 22 degrees, or if you wanted to go really tight and fine and refined for lighter use, or even potentially for better slicing, or even potentially for a slightly more slicey edge, you could go down to around 17 degrees. But I do have to say, I think the overall edge geometry seems to be about perfect. I love the blade shape. It's kind of a leaf-shaped design. Just good quality, average blade shape, which is exactly what you want from a utility knife. This is, again, going to be that general utility blade shape. Good quality utility knife. Whether you're using it in the woods or using it in the field, this is just an awesome, awesome overall blade shape. I could see this being awesome absolutely for a basic utility knife for an operator. I could see this being an everyday carry. I mean, in a weird way, I could see police officers really enjoying this design because it's low profile and thin, and it actually is probably reasonably concealable. I think this is just a really cool, badass knife. I really like the fact that they chamfered inside the cutout. You can see that adds just a little bit of a design element, but at the same time, nicely done. I always baton my knives. That gets a little bit thin there, so I would maybe pay attention to that. At S35VN, it's hard to say how that would handle. If this was a full carbon steel, I'd feel pretty confident in that. S35VN gets a little bit thin right there for my liking, so if you're going to baton, you probably need to stay further out, and I hope that doesn't stress. But again, not necessarily the intent for a knife of this size to do heavy woods processing. I always use my knives for fire, so I probably will, and that'll probably be something that I do in my field use testing. Now, in terms of a companion camp knife, this is going to be fantastic. Cutting cordage, processing food, all those simple tasks, absolutely wonderful. This blade shape is fantastic. I love the overall look and feel, and everything about this just beautiful. The carbon fiber handles with the nice red liners, everything fit up wonderfully, and this blade here in a PVD coating, which side by side here, when you take a look at it against the Tier 1 BC, a very similar look. I think they're going for the same color here, but it's maybe a little more silvery, and I don't even know if that's the right way to say it. A little bit lighter silver versus a deeper color here on the Tier 1 BC. These are like a tone of gray. They're not really a black, even though they present themselves as black. They're really in a grayish sort of family, so a little bit lighter here on the Cacula. Nicely done with the logos, of course, USA made, and again, the S35VN steel. What a gorgeous knife. But you'll often hear me say the sheath can make or break the user's experience. It's one thing to have an awesome knife, but if you don't have an awesome sheath, it can sometimes sort of suck. But that's not going to be a problem here with Phobos. Their Kydex is beautifully done. You can see a nice dangler system here. This is going to give you the ability to attach it to a pack or to your belt with ease. A unidirectional snap, which these are a little stiff at first, but once you get them lined up in the appropriate orientation, no problem, good and solid. You'll see here it has a dangler system that is mounted with these screws to the sheath that could be removed. Standard spacing here on these eyelets in case you want to put like another clip or something like that. And definitely you could leverage something like Molly locks or Tech locks, no problem. Little drainage hole at the bottom and nice lashing points throughout. Now, in terms of the retention, I expect this will literally be exactly perfect. Going to install the knife here. Little bit of friction right through the front, which is okay. I'm feeling it bind on the spine just a touch. But again, I'd rather have that than not. This is not going to be a showpiece knife for me. It's going to be a user. Awesome retention. No possible way this would fall out. Zero rattle. I mean, 1000% security on that. So that's just awesome. And then a nice subtle ramp at the top for deployment. The ability to get in on that choil, just a little bit inhibited by the dangler setup here. You can see this creates a little bit of competition of space when you go to index on there, but you can definitely do that. Get on with your thumb. And in terms of deploying the knife, this is quite tight. So you may need to loosen up on these screws just a little bit at first to sort of break in your sheath. And then once you do, it'll probably fit a little bit better for ease of deployment and extraction, but no problem. So, I mean, you just need to kind of leverage the mechanics of your thumb to press off, getting on that choil to pull out. And you can see, again, no problem. It's just a tight fit, but that's a good thing. No worries that this knife could even possibly fall out. And so with that, that's a preliminary look at the Cacula. What an awesome design. I absolutely love it. And now just sort of stacking it up against its brothers, the Cacula, the Tier 1 BC, and the Tier 1C. awesome, awesome knives. But what about some other offerings out there in S35VN? I mean, that is one thing. There are companies that certainly specialize in S35VN. The one knife that really sort of I think of, and I don't have one right now, that would be the Benchmade Bushcrafter. Just a similar overall principle, overall size. Generally speaking, that to me is really what my brain tells me is the most comparable knife in this size class and general capability in S35VN. Now, I do have a couple of knives. For example, the SE3. You're going to see this is going to be a smaller knife, but in S35VN. And, you know, again, everything's going to have a pro and a con. The S35VN going to do an awesome job for general edge retention, general overall resistance to corrosion, but sometimes it can be just a little bit brittle. Again, you just need to be a little bit careful. I would go as far as to say the Cacula size-wise is actually more comparable to the SE4, which is not in S35VN, but as you take a look at these side by side, a lot more similar in overall size, handle, size, general kind of use characteristics. Obviously a full flat grind on the SE4, but that just gives you a basic comparison. But another company that specializes in S35VN, White River, which I've covered a number of their knives. So you can see just, you know, a couple of nice offerings. Again, S35VN really is used in outdoor wilderness and survival blades, but you know, I do find that for the most part, it tends to land itself more on pocket knives than fixed blades. And it's not to say that it's not used. I mean, again, I'm giving you practical examples here, but a company that has pretty much specialized in S35VN, White River. So again, I mean, they have a number of different models. Their Ursus 45, I would say, is probably more comparable to what you would see in the Cacula. But again, you know, if you like knives in S35VN, it just goes to show that it is used out there. It's used successfully. And there are even companies that specifically specialize in that steel. So the fact that Phobos is using that steel here on the Cacula, I'm a big fan. Now, a couple last final thoughts and data points to consider as I get on this here. Roughly 0.18, which is 3/16 of an inch. So again, striking the balance between a robust knife and something that's going to be thin and slicey. In terms of the weight, pulling it off the scale at 7.1 ounces and 10.4 ounces with the Kydex sheath. And so again, a nice lightweight offering with that 4-inch blade length. Just an awesome, awesome knife from the people at Phobos. And so again, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Phobos who did provide this for review. Much more to come with this particular knife. We'll get into field use footage. We'll get into a whole bunch of testing, but that is to come in the future. And so thank you very much, guys, for following along. If you like this content, do me a favor. Take a look at my Outer Limitless 2 channel, which is more on the tactical and firearm side of things. At this point, that channel is growing quickly. I have a ton of videos up there. So if you like what you see here on Outer Limitless, do me a favor and check me out on Outer Limitless 2. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.